everybody, welcome to The World This Week. US-led airstrikes hit Islamic State in eastern Syria. British Parliament approves airstrikes against Islamic State. Belgium and Denmark join as well.
This is going to be a mission that will take not just months, but years.
Palestinian President Abbas accuses Israel of war of genocide at the UN.
The occupying power has chosen to defy the entire world by launching its war on Gaza.
Death toll from Ebola outbreak in West Africa rises. And North Korea admits its leader is not feeling well. These are some of the issues we'll touch upon this Sunday. Our panelists this Sunday are Dani Ayalon, former Israeli ambassador to Washington and deputy foreign minister, and Alon Pinkas, former advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, among others. The war against ISIS. Your assessment, gentlemen. Alon.
It's going well, but let's single out two things. President Obama started off without a coalition de facto, but it's a rolling coalition. With the limited success, a new coalition was built based primarily on the Arab Gulf, but not only. The French, the Canadians, the Australians, and even the British are now part and parcel of that coalition, so that should work. Secondly, let's not exaggerate the military threat. Daesh is a serious threat in terms of political stability and the way it may spread. But in terms of military targeting, it's not that big a deal.
Ambassador, it looks like the Pentagon is preparing the idea of using ground forces, either American, but maybe at first phase local. Is there a potential of this thing deteriorating?
Well, there is a real dividing line. There is a real dispute between the Pentagon, basically the Joint Chiefs, and the Chairman Dempsey, who said that without boots on the ground, it cannot be effective. And the White House, Obama, is totally against it. In the middle, there is, of course, Secretary Hagel, Secretary of Defense, who is formally representing the Joint Chiefs, but he will do, of course, whatever the President will tell him. So I don't think there is any chance for that. This is why I believe what President Obama did was trying a real overwhelming air attack when he tried last week with tomahawks and with airstrikes and with other special operations in a way of a shock and awe, not so much against ISIS or IS, but as a way to galvanize all the coalition behind the United States as a leader. And now, after this operation, which was a real operation, we see, as Alon said, the British, the Danish, and others joining force, and most importantly, the Arab League countries, whether it's Saudis, the Abu Dhabi, Qatar.
And there's the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the big show at the UN. President Abbas attacking Israel, reaction very strong already, and Prime Minister Netanyahu fighting back tomorrow.
Well, okay, let's put it in a little context. To begin with, the speech was horrendous. It was filled Abbas's speech was filled with lies and silly remarks and unfounded accusations and even libel. Calling what Israel's war in Gaza, if you want to say that Israel committed war crimes, I object, but I understand the legitimacy of the claim. When he calls it genocide, he's stepping beyond a line which he should not have stepped. That said, we've said this on this very show, that he never intended to proceed with the so-called pseudo-peace process because he knew he could never come to terms with what Netanyahu may or may not offer. And secondly, he was eyeing the international community and saying, I cannot seriously move forward with this peace process with this current Israeli government. Help me out.
Dani, and he gave Prime Minister Netanyahu exactly what he wanted?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is no way that you can even have a little bit of traction in political dialogue with the Palestinians now. I think he also kind of shunned away with the Americans are also very upset with him. And it's quite obvious that he is not a man now for peace. He is getting to be 80. I don't think that he wants his legacy to be of giving up the so-called right of return of the Palestinians or any other concessions that they will have to do. So he prefers to go out with a bang.
I agree with Danny, but be that as it may, there are two things that we need to remember. A, he no longer cares about what the U.S. will say about him because he gave up on America's mediation efforts, number one. Number two, he feels, and he may be right, but this is for a different conversation altogether, the time is on the Palestinians' side rather than Israel. By saying there's no one to talk to, Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, is not a partner. The two-state solution is null, void, and dead on delivery. What then? He could go to the UN. Number one, he could disband the Palestinian Authority. Number two, he could call for a one-state solution. Number three, I'm not weighing the likelihood of each scenario, but to think that he's the loser because he made such a speech, I would be very cautious before saying that.
And we'll finish with that. Thank you very much, Alon and Danny.
Thank you.
Let's get the Palestinian perspective now. Dr. Hussam Zomlot is a senior Fatah official, Fatah being the moderate organization which is in power at the West Bank, as opposed to Hamas, which controls Gaza. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, is this going to change? Meaning, will Fatah have more control over Gaza now?
No, it's not Fatah that will have more control. It's the Palestinian consensus government that is a government representing all Palestinians, including Fatah. But this government has the support of Hamas and all other Palestinian factions, and we differentiate between the government as an institution that has to provide for the people and between the political movements and parties that would have to challenge and resist the status quo.
Now, will that eventually include demilitarization of Hamas in Gaza?
So we cannot afford just to be all in a situation where we are hoping for peace, but we are exposed to Israel's repeated military onslaughts.
Now, President Abbas had very harsh words at the UN against Israel. Why do you think he took this path?
Well, yes, he had harsh words, but not against Israel. He had, and we all do, have hard and harsh words against Israel's expansion, Israel's occupation, Israel's colonization, Israel's siege. So this is really is rather strange that Israel is not liking President Abbas's condemnation of its illegal presence in our territory. So what do you expect? You expect him to say welcome, or we are happy that you are occupying us and controlling us and denying us very basic rights and killing 550 of our children only in the last month in Gaza? So I mean, expected, my friend.
Now, but Abbas blamed Israel for genocide. That was sure to ignite strong reaction in Israel, which it did. Did he do so for internal consumption?
If President Abbas was really tailored for internal consumption like Mr. Netanyahu, his statements would have been different all along. This is a man who has come up against the militarization of the Second Intifada publicly. And this is a man who has always, all of his career, has rejected any violent confrontations, have insisted on one path, that is the path of peace and bilateral negotiations with Israel. He was merely stating facts. When you do target indiscriminately 1.8 million people living in a very small, condensed territory without any regard to basic rules of war or even international humanitarian law, how do you call it? Israel is really guilty of war crimes. That's a fact. And the president and we confirm here that Israel must be held accountable. We cannot continue like this. We cannot continue like this. Yeah. This is not the war, the jungle here. Either we agree on very basic principles, very basic values that should govern our relationship, or this is not going to continue.
You know, Dr. Zomlot, I listened to the rhetoric on both sides. Looks like we are going back to the blame game once again.
What do you mean by blame game? Imagine in Israel that a whole region with almost 30–40% of your population has been besieged for all these years. People are unable to even travel or consume basic commodities. People had been made like the Stone Ages, digging underneath. And this is rhetoric. This is rhetoric. I mean, we are living it's rhetoric that Israel confiscated only 2 weeks ago 4,000 dunams south of Bethlehem. devastating, killing, murdering the prospect of a two-state solution. This is rhetoric.
Dr. Zomlot, I thank you very much for your perspective. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
There's a good chance that you've already watched the viral film of Israel's President Shimon Peres looking for a job after leaving office. Here's a clip.
זה נשמור כמובן. זה אני אתרום.
אדוני הנשיא, סיימת כבר לארוז?
אני עובד על זה.
מצוין. חשבת מה אתה הולך לעשות ביום שאחרי?
גם על זה אני עובד.
אוקיי, אז איזה ניסיון יש לך?
הייתי רפתן ממדרגה ראשונה.
הכל עכשיו חליבה אוטומטית.
הייתי שר דואר. גם דואר נכנס וגם דואר יוצא.
עכשיו הכל במייל.
אני...
תחפש משהו, תקווה לטוב.
That film was created by the granddaughter of President Peres, Mika Almog. Hi, Mika.
Hi.
Fresh from New York.
Indeed.
It was a big success over there?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Tell me about it.
Took us all by surprise. It went beyond our wildest expectations.
What the hell were you thinking?
I was out to have a good time. No, it all started about 6 months ago. My grandfather sent me a document he had written that was entitled Letter to a Young Friend. And in it, he had aimed to sort of bequeath upon young people some of the principles that had guided him through 70 years of public service. And I read it, and he sent it to me so I would edit it and give him feedback, as I do for him every once in a while. And I read it, and I thought that, you know, there are a lot of beautiful things in it, but I called him and I said, listen, this is great. The only problem is your target audience won't read it, so it won't achieve the goal that you've set. And I said, if you want to talk to young people, you have to speak their language.
No, everything in this film is true.
Everything, all of the information is true, absolutely.
He was milking cows.
Yes.
He was herding goats.
Down to the T, absolutely.
Uh-huh, I see. Okay, here's another clip.
שלום, 95 מלא.
שמן מים?
לא תודה.
2 שישיות מים ב-20 שקלים?
אני לא מעוניין.
אתה רוצה נוזל או שמשות?
אני לא מעוניין.
סע שלום. זה הפתרון היחידי.
שלום.
נשק יש?
לא.
האינטלקט הוא הנשק הטוב ביותר. רובה סער יש?
לא.
כוונת צלפים?
לא, מה פתאום?
טיול בליסטי נגד ספינות?
לא.
מצוין. ננו-טכנולוגיה היא העתיד. תיכנס.
תודה.
How is he as an actor?
He's good. He's quite disciplined. He was very cooperative. He told me when we were done shooting, he said, you know, I wouldn't have done 1/10 of this with anyone else, and I think that's understandable because there's a fine line between displaying a sense of humor and being able to poke some fun at yourself, and between, you know, being ridiculous. And I was very acutely aware of staying within these parameters throughout the process while writing it and while shooting it. And I think because he felt safe, he was totally willing to go with us. So he was very disciplined on the set. Every once in a while, he lost patience because, you know, you have to do a long shot and then a close-up and then a 2-shot. Something in the camera doesn't work.
Being handled all the time.
Yeah, and, you know, I'm not always happy with the way it delivers the line. And at one point, he said to me, again, I have to say the same line and again. And I said, well, haven't you been saying the same things in politics for 50 years? So he said, well, at least the audience changed.
Yeah, right. Well, the guy is 91 years old.
He's 91 years old. 91 years young. He's amazing.
Young, indeed, indeed. Well, here's another clip.
רוצה לשמוע קצת על מבצעים?
Okay.
כשיצאנו למבצע אנטבה, הכל היה לוד בערפל.
קבלו את שימי פירס!
מכירים את זה שאתם מקימים מפעל טקסטיל בנגב וכולם חושבים שזה משהו אחר?
Yeah, well, to our viewers around the world, we'll just say that Peres is considered the father of Israel's nuclear program, and in Dimona, and the reactor there was referred to as a textile factory for years. So that's just to explain that the joke was really a joke.
Actually, it went over remarkably well when we screened the video in New York. And, you know, there were a few things that I was absolutely certain would communicate to an international audience anywhere. And there were certain things I wasn't sure about. And it turns out that the textile factory is more well-known than you would think.
Now, tell me a little bit about Mika. You're involved in so many things. You're even an actress now in a series on TV. What else?
I just went back to acting after about a dozen years of restraining myself to being strictly behind the camera, so that's been a lot of fun. And currently I'm in the process of casting a new film that I wrote. It's called Girls' Night, and it's about domestic abuse. It's an interesting film. I'm also going to direct it with my creative partner, Hila Medallia. So we're working on that. Even that will have its funny moments, although it's a very painful and important subject. And it's got a great twist in the end, so that's what we're working on now. And I continue to write for Haaretz magazine. I have a weekly column and political satire column, and they're both a lot of fun.
Yes, and you have a great thing on your resume now. Thank you very much for coming.
And I made my grandpa happy.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And this has been The World This Week. We'll see you here next Sunday. Take care, have a great week.